up sort of the portion of the workshop before we get into the teacher resources. Just wanted to kind of follow up. So we got to experience different kinds of cleaning techniques. And now I wanted to go over how you store your seeds and then germinate them. And so on that page 3 of your handout, we'll go through that just a little bit, where I give you some terminology that is going to be relevant because each type of plant has different requirements. And let's just go through this for a minute. So cold, moist stratification. That means it needs to be in damp, cold, kind of sand or something. So how we do it, guys, is we get sand from, and you want to make sure your sand is clean. So if you purchase sand from the hardware store or something like that, where it's not from your sandbox, it might have some weed seeds in it. But we use sand. In some places we'll use different kinds of medium, like vermiculite or something like that. But we use sand. And is that that test? Wasn't that yesterday?
That's our school test. Can't silence that.
Okay. So what we do, guys, is there are different plants that require this cold, moist stratification. So that is where you'll see the CMS. And so if you look on the plant list of the plants that we've given you, you'll see in the corner, you'll see either CMS or CD. So CMS means cold, moist stratification. So that needs, generally speaking, seed needs at least 30 days, maybe up to 90 or 100 days of being in your refrigerator or outside. So what we do is we have our sand and we get it to the point of just moist, not saturating wet, but just moist enough that, and then we put our seed in with that, and you mix it so the seed is quite, right mixing in with the sand, and it's moist, and you put it in a baggie and label it, and oftentimes what I like to do is write how long it needs to be in there. Like I'll either say the date that I put it in, or basically date in, date out. And so on page 3, like I said. So let's read through this so you can see. So sterile sand, dampened so it holds the shape when you put it into a ball, not wet. And there are 2 methods of cold storage. Refrigerator, and make sure it is not getting any of the gas that comes off of apples. The ethylene, the gas, or like bananas give off. And you can do that how we do it. And we allocate enough space in our refrigerator that we use something like this with the lid. And so we put all our bags of those individual species in, and you don't need very much. I mean, you saw how small some of those seeds are, right? So we're not talking about a lot of space. And so the individual baggies are in here labeled, and then put a cap on it so there is no way any of that gas exchange. And the reason why is that ethylene will kind of germinate these guys. That gas, like it does with ripening fruit, it will push that out, and the seed is like, oh, it's time to wake up or whatever. I mean, you guys know more about that from the science standpoint, but it will prematurely would start germinating. So you don't want that to happen. So you just kind of make sure it's enclosed in something. Another option would be, if you don't have space in, say, school refrigerator or refrigerator at home, is put it outside. So basically kind of think of the outside as a refrigerator. And that's okay if the temperatures get freezing. The sand is not going to be as much crystallizing as soil would be. Sand has enough pore space in it that it'll be fine if it's out there. But what some people do is they actually will repurpose like a tub or something like that, like even one of these handy, although you would want a lid on it. But something like that where you can, if you have the foresight and you put it in the ground, so it kind of has more of a steady temperature instead of the fluctuation. So it really depends. It's kind of like a root cellar in that regard. That you would have said, I want to kind of have the consistency, ground temperature instead of sometimes we'll get weird warm temperatures, and that could jeopardize your seeds because they're a little bit more vulnerable being out of kind of up in the air. Question?
Hey Rebecca, do you need to do any of the shaking of the bags that I'd heard in the past was important for like scarifying the seed
Okay, well, so some seeds do need to be scarified, like the scarification, and that you could do with the sandpaper. So like the lupin, that baptisia or wild indigo that we were working with, you can do a stratification with just sandpaper just to kind of scratch the surface. And that is, let me see an example if I gave you guys an example of scarification. Okay, yeah, so on page 4, the baptisia is cold stratification. Did I give you all those? Yeah, I is inoculant. If you've got this inoculant, oh, Courtney, can you give me that enzyme bag that's in the other room? It's a little bag of enzyme. So going back to the idea that some things do want to be scarified, and they would have that happen in the soil with the freeze thaw. You know, the earth has some those kind of minerals that would scratch it up. It's generally, a lot of people say, people will say it's not as, you don't need to be as intense with your scratching it up as you might think. And, okay, let me go back to so that mycorrhizae. So this is a bag. I love the place GrowCo. You guys know GrowCo on Michigan Avenue? If you ever need supplements for soil, GrowCo. They specialize in hydroponically grown things, but they are my favorite place to find organic fertilizers and soil amendments. And that mycorrhizae is something that I got so that the roots of plants that we're planting will have a better chance to kind of give them a little bit of a kick. And there is a specific inoculant for lupin and baptisia. And I'm going to show you this reference of the Prairie Nursery. You can buy that inoculant from them. And actually, if you were to buy seed of lupin from them, that kind of comes in part of the deal. They know they want germination to have higher success, so they'll give you some of that. Or maybe it's upcharge, but that can be important for certain plants. Other terminology is called cold dry or CD, and that means it doesn't need to go in the refrigerator. It doesn't need to be moist. It can just be, you can just have it literally wherever. And that, like milkweed, actually a lot of plants are dry storage, and yet we oftentimes will still stratify it in the refrigerator because it doesn't hurt. We'd rather have higher success rate. Joanna, were you going to question?
How do you know how much sand is for how much seed you have?
So if you were doing, like if you were a nursery, you would do it in a kind of more sophisticated way. We just eyeball it. And
so basically it's like a tablespoon of sand with a tablespoon of seed. So
it really doesn't matter. I mean, if you think
very much, like a couple times, I think like a couple of bags we did, we had a lot of sand, and then you're trying to find seeds, and you don't need very much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't need it very much. You really don't. I mean, you're just trying to give that seed the moisture, kind of consistent moisture, and just how that reacts with the cold temperature. The ratios are not as important.
But then when you're ready to plant, you do have to separate the seed from the sand?
You don't
yeah.
Usually on the teeny tiny seed, I mean, you really.
Right, okay.
And the sand is part of the medium. That's just fine. That's a natural product that you would have. In fact, I like having a little bit of sand versus just that. We didn't bring in the soil that we'd show you, but we can do that. Actually, when you go and collect your seed, we'll open up a tub. You can see the soil that we use. It's a potting soil. Oh yeah. Okay, this is the milk jug. So have you guys all heard about these little greenhouses that you can make very easily? So, like the seeds that you're getting today, you could do this in your school and you could make you can mix your seed. You can just be like, I'm going to call this a meadow, and like you have a blend of different seeds. Well, you could just try it and say we're experimenting with different combinations. Or just do single species. But basically, yeah. So taking an old milk jug, this is what you would do to basically put the seed in the fall, and this stays out on your deck all winter long. And once the warm temperatures start happening, you'll see that there's germination and they start growing. And this little cover, protects it from some of the elements and from animals that might want to eat the seed. So basically what this does is a cold stratification outside. So when we're talking about the cold stratification, we're trying to emulate what's happening in nature by giving some moisture and putting it in the refrigerator. And it's amazing that sometimes only 30 days kind of triggers that in the seed. So we can leave our seed generally in the refrigerator for longer, but there have been so many times the seeds have started germinating because they're ready to go. So just play it. Keep in mind, though, because all of a sudden sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, it's December already, and I really wanted to start in our greenhouse in January. I'm not giving them enough time. So just kind of back yourself out because fall happens really quick. And then going back to the winter thing. So any of these seeds you could disperse out in wherever you want to grow right now, and they'll take advantage of that natural freeze-thaw cycle. You can also seed all winter long, and that's sometimes really easy because then you can see, because if there's snow, you can see where you're seeding. And so don't ever be afraid to be doing these things in the winter months. So this is kind of a handy little thing. And so we have a product. If anyone's interested, we've got the bag in the front I can show you. But it's a company called Earth Carpet, and you can special order it from the Rockford hardware store, the Cedar Springs, Caledonia, I forget what that's called, Feed Mill, or anyway, yeah. So that's that. So yeah, you can, like I said, you could call Prairie Nursery and say, I would like to request a native plant catalog. That, by comparison of the one that we have in here, guys, in your folder you have the Cardinal. Now, Cardinal does massive, huge restoration projects. They have very great information in here as well and some nice photographs. But they are, like I said, a bigger company dealing with major restoration projects. They're not going to be as user-friendly or informative for you and your school projects, whereas Prairie Nursery will be. And the place that we were looking at on the iPads was Prairie Moon. Now those guys are in Minnesota, and they're the ones that have the really good imaging of the seed. So different companies have better tools for you to work with, but that's really beneficial to see that. And then let's see, what else did I want to say to you guys? I guess okay. So let's pretend that you've got your seeds; they were stored the correct way. These are plug flats, you can see, and they are really the preferred method of growing native plants. And so this is Indian grass, you guys. See how wonderful and developed those roots are? So this would have been grown, this would have been started in the spring. And that's such an this is such a great erosion control, soil stabilization plant. A lot of our native grasses definitely have that attribute. But so we start these, and we were talking in the greenhouse, sometimes we start with putting the seeds in one of those flat trays, where we were cleaning the seeds. We might start with just soil, and then you just sprinkle your seeds in there, and then they germinate. Might prefer putting my soil in here, and then putting in 3 different seeds, depending on the species, and just to see what germinates. And then if I have 3 plants in there, then I can decide which is the best looking one, looks most healthy, and kind of eliminate the other ones. But I like to grow right in here because then you don't have to worry about transferring the plants. And some species do not, they're very, very sensitive with their roots being kind of modified. Okay, and I think, lastly, for harvesting, this is kind of cool. Okay, these are these cloth bags, and this is a company, if anyone wants to know. What's that? Do you know?
Paper lunch sacks do it too.
Yeah, we do a lot of paper, yes. These, we'll have some of these so you can take a look at. But this is what Plaster Creek Stewart says. They harvest all their seed in bags like this. They cinch it up, you guys, and they don't do what we do. You know how we do the sandbags and the seeds? They take this whole thing and then have they have a styrofoam little container with soil that's moist, and they pop this whole thing in there. And that's for them, it's good to go. This then I've seen their bags sometimes get moldy, and I just don't know, does that affect the germination, whatever. That's because they're dealing with a lot of plants, and so for them that's just really efficient. They put all their sedge, certain type of sedge, in this bin, and they don't kind of mess around like we do, but we're not dealing with the same kind of quantity that they are.